been a little while because we've just been slumming it and hanging out with each other and just talking about fun things. And Carrie was absolutely truant last time, so I had to run the show all by myself. I'm okay. But today we have Wayne Turmel, who is co-author of the book The Long Distance Leader, second edition, and several other books with the long distance name on them. And so we're going to talk about remote and hybrid and return to office and all that kind of stuff. This is going to be a show.
Hi, everyone. Tim Kitzer from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, welcoming you to The Backpack Show. Your hosts, Chris Brogan, Carrie Gargone, Boom Shakalaka.
Backpack Show.
You actually met at PodCamp, though, many years ago.
Yeah, PodCamp New York. We hung out a long time ago. I've been like in and around Wayne a whole bunch of times. So it's just kind of fun to drag him on the show. But yeah, we were just talking about it. It's just such a small universe. The other co-author who's not here, Kevin Eikenberry, I've been around him. I think if Kevin ran an event, I spoke at the event, or I was at an event in Indianapolis and he and I both were speaking. I can't remember because I'm an old man. But we have Wayne here, so we can drag him in and we can start talking about the long distance leader and all things remote work and leadership. Hey, Wayne.
Hey, how the heck are you?
Best day of my life. Wayne, this
so far,
it can only go up, really, I think. So we are so glad to have you here. We have this great opportunity to talk about something that everyone has experienced ever since this happened, right? Because we suddenly had this pandemic and all of the same stuff that everyone has thought theoretically about for a long time suddenly became a lot of people's reality. And so you had already written with Kevin this book about long distance leader, but now, after this time, there's even more that people need to think about. Let's talk just for a quick second about the distance between first edition, second edition on the book.
Yeah, the first edition came out in 2018, and people were like, well, yeah, we're thinking about doing this remote work thing. And I said, good, you should be thinking about it. And then, 2020, we got pushed across the Rubicon, and I felt a little bit like the crazy guy on the sidewalk with the sandwich board that says the end is near. And now I have a new sandwich board that says, told you. But a little bit has changed in the 6 years since the book came out. And so we updated it for technology. We updated it for the fact that more and more people are doing hybrid work, or what they call hybrid work, which usually isn't. But, it's kind of a mishmash and it's a little crazy right now. And all we're trying to do is help people navigate the crazy.
So your expertise in this area then actually predates the pandemic, whereas a lot of people were kind of like thrown into remote work.
Yeah, I actually started focusing on remote communication and kind of virtual work back in 2006, 2007. And so I was standing on that corner for a very long time before the parade finally passed by. And so, yeah, I've been, and mainly because I was doing that kind of work and nobody was talking to me. I had a team that was scattered all over the place. And then when I ran my own company, I ran it from home. And nobody was talking about that part of the business. I got focused. I first met Chris. I was focused on teaching people how to use this new scary thing called WebEx. And now here we are, and it's a different world.
Well, can we talk about one thing that hasn't changed, the isolation of it and the kind of emotional needs of people working remotely for the first time? It's a little different working remotely as part of a team or leader of a team at an organization, as opposed to like someone like Chris, who is leader doing his own thing.
Yeah, well, Chris has the voices in his head.
That's all I'm saying.
Chris has the voices in his head to keep him company, so that's not quite the same thing. It's really funny. There are two issues, and people talk about the isolation and the loneliness, and that's absolutely true. Not everybody is cut out to kind of rule themselves with the discipline and the encouragement and whatnot that's necessary to get the work done. The other thing is, for the last 100 years or so, we have been socialized and trained in what it means to work and to go to work. And then suddenly the guardrails were off, and some people embraced it and loved it and said, this is fabulous. And others didn't know what to do with it. I'll give you an example, Carrie. When we started the book, it was one of the questions we asked people was, are you worried that your people aren't working? And the senior executives, of course, were totally convinced that nobody was working and they'd all slack off. And the individual managers were like, I know my people are working. And in the first 6 months of COVID, the problem wasn't, are people working? It was, when are they not? Because when we go to work, our time is our own until we hit the door, and then we put in our 8 hours, like good, time for money workers, and then we leave and our time is our own again. But when COVID hit, people who weren't used to working by themselves, their feet would hit the floor. They'd start checking their email. They were still answering email at 10 o'clock at night. The problem wasn't that they weren't working. The problem was that 50% of them couldn't shut it off and were in fact working more.
So Alicia, who works with me, by the way, Wayne, she said she met you in 2019 at a conference and got a copy of that book, read it on the plane, and then 2020 hit. Such a great book at the right time for her. I was thinking what you were thinking about, worried that people work, because I think early on, that's a lot of the big concern that leaders had, was that, butts in chairs, right? Which I did the most slacking off in my life when I was in an office. Like you said, I'm sort of more productive not in the office. It's weird to have to turn people around to that. Do you find you still have to convince people, or when you go in and talk to leaders, what's top of mind for them now?
Well, okay, I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to be a responsible grown-up and say I don't blame a lot of the senior leaders, because they had never worked remotely. They had never done it. They became successful, and they only knew one way to become successful and achieve that position. And so they didn't have a frame of reference. After the, diaspora, a lot of them changed their minds because they saw that what they were worried about didn't happen. I mean, the two big things they were worried about were engagement and productivity. Well, in the first 6 months of the pandemic, engagement actually went way up. And I'm happy to go into those weeds if anybody cares. Engagement is a fairly geeky topic. But the other thing was, productivity did not fall off the way people thought it would. And some of that is brute force, right? We're working more hours, we're trying to compensate, and so work is getting done, right? That was part of it.
Also, we didn't have anything else to do. Come on, let's be real.
There was that too. And hi, Alicia, how are you? I am so delighted that you're here. Yay. I'm sorry, I got sidetracked.
Totally fine. Oh, and so Alicia just said it's jarring to see so many return to office mandates. We were just talking very briefly before we started about the Amazon situation, because now there's like a brouhaha starting there. If you were the one who is paid to come in and consult with Amazon, which they should do, how would you help them kind of unfurl this?
Well, first of all, Jeff Bezos is like the third richest man in the world. It would be pretty ballsy of me to suggest that I can tell him how to run his business. The other thing you have to remember about Amazon is that all the computer stuff aside, it's essentially a 20th century warehouse model, right? Most of their business is putting stuff on trucks. And so they look at things differently. The other thing is, they aren't afraid of turnover. Their turnover rate is 150% a year. So, what are people going to do? Quit? There's a line of people around the block waiting to take those positions. And that's kind of their attitude. And it's their football. They can do with that what they will. The problem is that I think a lot of people don't realize that we are in maybe the most seismic change in what it means to have a job since about the 20s or 30s, 1920s or 30s, when people were leaving the farm and they were commuting to an office because there were cars and stuff. And we had offices and people moved to the cities and we got a 40-hour work week and an 8-hour day and all these things that were incredibly radical at the time. And people were convinced it was going to be the end of society. And what do you mean only 8 hours? Those lazy workers, right? And now we are going through a change in what does it mean to go to work if we don't go to work? And I find myself kind of in opposition sometimes to the remote work zealots who are like death to the office and, go work on a beach. And well, some stuff needs to be done. And you can't, during COVID, the poor woman who cut my hair was insanely jealous of the fact that I got to work from home. And she said, but people can't mail me their heads. I've got to be where the chair and the scissors.
You could get someone to do it, but it would be really troubling.
And you'd only need one haircut.
That's true. Yeah, just the one.
So,
but I wonder if, so while this is happening, Wayne, do you find that has it really changed? Like what makes you successful as a remote leader? Has it actually changed? Or is it just that now there's more widespread knowledge and acceptance of the practice of remote work?
Well, I think it does. And returning to the office or going to a hybrid kind of situation actually complicates it. And here's why. If everybody's in the office, we kind of know if you're a good leader, right? We know there are a lot of lousy leaders. But if you're a good leader and you're in the office, that's one way to lead. If everybody's remote, everybody's doing the same thing in the same way, you can kind of adjust and do that. And again, good leaders find a way to make it work. In our book, rule number 1 is think leadership first, location second, right? During COVID, if you were a good leader and you knew the things you had to do, coach, delegate, inspire, do all that good stuff, you found a way to do it. Hopefully our book helped, but you found a way to muddle through. When we return to the office, it's really tempting to think we've gone back to the blessed before times. And what happens is if you've got a team where some people are there and some people aren't and some are remote, everything defaults to the people in the office. They get the chance to work on cool projects. They get tasks delegated to them. They have access to the manager when they need it. And the people who are working remotely very quickly can feel like second-class citizens. And it's interesting about remote work because coming out of the pandemic, we learned something really interesting, which is the people who work remotely or work part-time in the office, part-time remotely, and are happy and engaged are the most happy and engaged employees you've got. They ain't going anywhere. The ones who are disengaged and don't give a hoot are completely disengaged, and they are ripe for turnover, for being picked off by recruiters, all that kind of thing. And so, because think about it, if I like my job and I go into the office every day, if I want to quit my job and work somewhere else, there's a lot that changes. My commute changes, there's lots of stuff that goes on. If I'm at home and I decide to take another job, literally the only thing that changes is my login information. My commute doesn't change. My hours don't change.
So many of those things
Right.
are suddenly, glued together. Chloe had a question for you. This was, do you think that remote work enhances employee autonomy and deepens their sense of individual contribution?
If you do it right, yes. And here's what I mean by that. So let's look at two parts of that sentence, right? The first is, does it enhance employee autonomy? It kind of has to, because you literally cannot micromanage somebody for very long in a remote environment. There are companies that try, right? They monitor your keystrokes and you have to go in through the VPN and you get people doing all kinds of cool workarounds. Like you can buy a mouse now that jiggles every 5 minutes so that it records as activity, right? So if you're living under that kind of regime, but no, good remote work requires autonomy. I tell you what's expected of you. I tell you how we're going to measure it. I tell you when I'm going to check in, and then you go and do it. And as long as you meet those metrics and you do that stuff, it's all good. The second part of the question. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's like people are actually mouse jiggling. That seems insane to me. You jiggle your mouse all day long. It's not getting any documents edited or written. It's not
and it's not even a euphemism. It's really true. But what am I measuring? I'm measuring the activity. I'm measuring that they log on. It's the same thing as being in the office. If Bob is at his desk at 9 o'clock and doesn't leave till 5:30, he's a good employee. As Chris said earlier, there is no guarantee that Bob's doing a darn thing all day long, but by God, he's in the office when he should be and he leaves when he should. So the employee autonomy piece is part of it. The other thing, and I think I can't read the question on my screen here. Oh, yes, I can. Does it deepen their sense of individual contribution? And again, if we do it right? One of the problems with the way that we manage remote workers is that people who work remotely say that they get far less feedback and far less positive feedback than people in the office get. Well, if I'm going to have a sense that my contribution is valued, I need feedback. I need people to say, good job. The problem is if I'm in the office and people are in the office and, Carrie does a lovely job on something, I have to stop and type it in an email or get on Teams or whatever. It actually takes work to do that. So I'll tell her that next time I talk to her. No, I won't, because I'll forget, because 5,000 things will happen before then. But if something's wrong, you can bet I'm going to get on there and go, Carrie, we need to talk about this. So the balance of positive and negative feedback can be off. And unless you are very confident in yourself and have a good relationship with your manager and the trust and the lines of communication are there, pretty soon it starts to feel like you're either being ignored or jumped on. And that tends to lessen your sense of connection and engagement.
You mentioned trust. How can you set up an environment of trust and psychological safety when you're leading remotely?
Yeah, you prepared questions and everything. Somebody did their homework. Trust is like love. It's both a verb and a noun. And so we act as though trust is this thing that exists, but it exists because you do it. So it always starts with a position of trust, but trust also needs to be verified, right? Trust is evidence-based. So you and I have a conversation. You're going to do this in this amount of time. You're going to have it in on Friday. It's going to be to X level of quality. And I trust that you are going to do that. Friday arrives, it's not there, or it's sloppy, or whatever. The trust has taken a hit. Conversely, you as an employee need to trust me that if I think there's something wrong, I'm going to stop you before you fall off the cliff. And if I think there's something right, you're going to tell me on occasion and support me and make me feel valued. And so trust is actually, the evidence comes in three forms. In the book, we have a pyramid model because we're consultants and everything is models of three. At the top is alignment. Are we aligned? Are we doing the same things for the same reason? And that one doesn't get impacted by distance very much. I mean, we either know why we're here or we don't. But the other two are really impacted by distance because I can't trust you if I don't think you're competent. Right? I can't leave you to do your work if I think you're going to screw off, if I think you're going to not do a very good job, if I think you're going to do the bare minimum. So I need to know, and I need evidence that you are competent at your job. And
to make on this,
that requires metrics and check-ins and all of that good stuff. The second part, though, is motivation. I need to know that you are trying, that you are doing, that you are giving your best effort, that you're doing the best you can. And again, what's the evidence for that? Well, if you turn in the things that are due at the very second that they're due, if you refuse to put your webcam on because you're in your AC/DC t-shirt and your bunny slippers, if you don't take an active part in meetings, how do I know if you're engaged or not? Matter of fact, I'm likely to assume that you're not, rightly or wrongly. So we need evidence. And part of this is the responsibility of the employee. It's funny, when a lot of times when I have this conversation, it's all about the employer. Those weasels are making us come back to the office, and those weasels don't trust us, and they just want to squeeze every drop of blood out. Well, yeah, welcome to capitalism. This is the world we live in. But the other side of this is what we call the Spider-Man paradox. You'll like this one, Chris. The Spider-Man paradox, for those heavy into the geekdom, is with great power comes great responsibility. Well, with the flexibility and the ability to work from home and the ability to work from almost any darn place we want, that's a freedom. But we have a responsibility. If we want our boss to know we're working, we need to show him or her that we're working. If we want them to trust us, we need to be worthy of that trust. And so this is what I said when I said that we're going through this kind of seismic change in what does it mean. Some of that is just what work gets done, where it happens. But the other thing is, what do I owe my employer for the money that they pay me? And what do we owe them for the money that they pay us?
Right.
And we've never had to make that decision before. It was always made for us.
Wayne, in the last couple of minutes we have left, I want to just do a couple of things. One is Alicia says, these things, feedback, building relationships, trust, have to be cultivated with a much greater sense of intention and priority when working remotely. And I agree. I mean, exactly what you just said sums it up.
Well, and she's not wrong. I mean, the problem is that when we're in the office, things like giving feedback, right? I'm walking through the office and Carrie's banging her head on her monitor. It's very easy for me to say, Carrie, is everything okay? If we're working remote, I can't see her banging on her monitor, right? And I say, is everything okay? Yeah, exactly. Is everything okay? And she says, yeah, it's fine. Stupid me goes, she said it's fine. It must be fine. No, you need to do a little more. It takes a little more work and a little more intentionality. And so Alicia is absolutely right. And she's read the book, at least the first edition. So that's the whole thing. It's like, yes, all that leadership stuff that you've always should be doing, you still need to do that. But now you're doing it in ways that maybe you haven't before, and you're doing it without some of the guardrails and the cues that were always there to help keep you on track.
Can we talk about team building for a second? Because as painful as it was in person, please, Wayne, it hurts sometimes. It hurts in a virtual team to try and find ways to create team collaboration and trust, especially when everyone's role is distinct and there's not a lot of collaboration normally. They're sort of like siloed and isolated.
I will. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a quick story, and I hate this story because it just reminds me that my co-author is one of the better bosses you will ever have. I am not a fan of team building exercises. Makes me crazy. But I am a big fan of easy communication, people talking to each other, people having fun, right? Misery is optional. So we have a monthly meeting. All 15 people in the organization are on the meeting. And Kevin always starts with an icebreaker. And the grumpy old man hates this, but okay, fine. I'll play along. So one week, if you were a tree, what kind of tree would you? Oh, kill me. So one day we're having the meeting and Kevin goes, "What's your favorite candy?" Okay, I'll play along. So I don't. 3 weeks later, a 3-pound bag of gummy bears shows up on my front porch.
Which is a real jerk move because you said Hershey Kisses.
But here's the thing. I live in Las Vegas. I need to bring it in before it becomes one giant gummy bear, right? So I bring it in, and there's no note, there's no nothing. It's just manna from heaven. Gummy bears have arrived on my porch. And I'm trying to figure out where it came from, because this has been 3 weeks since the icebreaker exercise, right? But I chat with somebody on the team. I go, "This is a weird question. Did you get candy on your porch?" And the answer was yes. And so we figured out pretty quickly that it came from Kevin. But for about a week, we started every conversation with, "What kind of candy did you get?" Or, "Have you eaten it all yet?" Or, just kind of silly little phatic conversation. Phatic, P-H-A-T-I-C, big psychology word. It just means the stupid conversation that you have before you get to the real stuff, right?
Building can be annoying, but team building that actually, foments a good interaction is the goal, is what you're saying.
Is it purposeful? Does it help to actually create those interactions? And so I will gladly tell him what kind of tree I will be, because he only does that once a month, and it has ripple effects. And our organization is really big on, a couple of people have had real major health or family tragedy things in their life in the past year. And everybody is super supportive and super engaged. And we do silly things like, we actually have a chat channel called the Water Cooler, which is for all the stupid stuff that you talk about at the coffee pot, right? It's National Donut Day. My kid scored a touchdown on Friday night. Just that kind of stuff. Because one of the most corrosive things on a remote team, when everything is being done electronically and in writing, is it becomes transactional. "Hey, can you send me that file? Here's your file." Right? As opposed to if we were in person, it would say, "Hey, good morning, Chris. How are you?" Right? It's like those kinds of questions. And Steve and Elaine in Vegas, how are you? I live in Vegas too, so there you go. It's important that you do those things. And you have to jumpstart them. They don't happen naturally. Let me give you one thing, because I know we're at the end of our time and I'm babbling. When somebody joins our organization, their first assignment, regardless of their position, their first assignment is to reach out to every single member of the team and schedule a half-hour webcam conversation with them. And some of it is, what do you do? What should I know about working for Kevin? That kind of stuff. But a half hour is a long time, and you learn where they went to school. And in our team, they're big on college football. Don't ask, I don't care. But I now follow it enough that I can have that conversation with people, right? It's like, "Hey, sorry about Penn State," whatever it is. But they do that right away, because in the office, you'd eventually get to meet everybody. But online, you have an all-hands meeting once a month, And aside from, hey, there's a new guy, everybody say hi to Bob, it might be another month before I have anything to do with Bob, and I'm not building relationships, and I'm not adding to Bob's network, you know? And so the thing that Alicia pointed out is that it's about intentionality. All that stuff that happens organically needs to be done intentionally.
We have come to a spot in the show. We have the last couple of things we got to do, and one of them.
Oh, and here's our person of the day.
Well, I pushed the button and nothing happened. That's new.
No, it went.
It went.
Did you see? Oh, all right. I just guess I've failed. We're going to give it to Alicia. So she's our person of the day. Hooray! Good job. That means you are entitled to one free apple. You just have to walk into any store, take the apple, leave, eat it right away. Don't even think about it. Just go for it. So, Wayne,
This episode brought to you by Bob's Bail Bonds.
That's right. There's one thing we do with every guest. I forgot to tell you this, but it's not that hard to figure out. We ask every single guest that's ever been on the show. That's Sir Mix-a-Lot. That is Butterscotch, the world's best female beatboxer. We ask them all the same question: what goes in your backpack? And this is basically, it could be anything physical or metaphorical. It could be something very simple and brief, not a framework you consultant you. It could be something like a hamster, or it could be something like hope for the future. Wayne Turmel, what are you going to add to the backpack today?
You know what's in my backpack all the time? I'm such an old man. A spiral-bound, big-ass notebook, which I carry with me all the time because I also write novels as well as doing all this big grown-up stuff. And I have a mind like a sieve. So I have to make lists of stuff that I need to do. I write it down when I think about it. But I also just love being able to capture something in a hurry.
Notebook it is. We'll give that one a win. So one of the things I was thinking about with remote work is that certain generations weren't allowed to do remote work. My Grammy worked in a factory. She made toilet paper, paper towels, and napkins depending on the day. But I'll tell you, she did have sort of a version of remote work. It's a little crazy.